Hey, fathers and sons, today we're going to take a look at Proverbs chapter 7. And yep, you guessed it. Once again, we're going to talk about lust and sex. It seems like this is a topic that just keeps coming up over and over for Solomon and his sons to talk about. The reason is because Solomon struggled with this, and every guy struggles with this, whether it was 3,000 years ago or today. Now, there's something really cool in this chapter that I want to show you, and it starts here in verse 8. What I see is a progression when it comes to sexual temptation and lust and pornography and all of that stuff. See if you recognize this progression in your own life. First of all, verse 8, it says that this guy, this naive young guy, lacked common sense, and he was crossing the street near the house of an immoral woman, strolling down the path by her house. It was at twilight in the evening as deep darkness fell. Step number one when it comes to sexual temptation is you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Look at what this young man is doing. He's strolling down near the immoral woman's house. Guys, look, if you struggle with sexual temptation, be honest about where it starts. Be honest about putting yourself in a position, and look, it even says that it was late at night. You're putting yourself in a position to fail. Young men, I'm speaking to you right now. Don't put yourself in a position to fail. That's how the whole thing gets started. That's step number one. Step number two is in verses 14 and 15. The woman says, I've just made my peace offerings and fulfilled my vows. You're the one I was looking for. I came out to find you, and here you are. Here's the second thing that happens, young men, when it comes to pornography and temptation and all this kind of stuff, is you start believing subtle little lies, right? Here, this woman is the one lying, but in our own stories, a lot of times we just believe the lies in our own head. It's no big deal. Or maybe you're going out with a Christian girl, young men, and so you say, well, she's a Christian, so we can do these kinds of things. We can cross these lines because she's a Christian, which is kind of what I see here in verse 14. It's like this immoral woman is trying to prove that she's a good person. So then maybe in the mind of this young, foolish man, this justifies whatever he's going to do with her. Now, here's the third step in the progression. It's in verses 18 and 19. She says, come, let's drink our fill of love until morning. Let's enjoy each other's caresses, for my husband is not home. The third step is to tell yourself that there are not going to be consequences for whatever you're doing right now. Look, she said, we're not going to get caught. It's going to be great. We're going to enjoy each other's caresses. So the third part in this progression is that you tell yourself it's worth it, that stepping across that line is worth it, that the joy that you're going to experience in the moment is greater than the consequence of your sexual sin in the long run. And it's just not true. Now, there's one more passage I want to show you here down at the bottom of this chapter, because the question is then, how can I avoid all of this? And verse 25 gives us the answer. The father says to the young son, don't let your hearts stray away toward her. Don't wander down her wayward path. Does this look familiar to any of you? Go back and review this chapter, and here's what the dad is basically saying. If you don't want to go down this path of destruction when it comes to sexual sin and pornography and lust and all this kind of stuff, he says it's just really simple. Don't do the first thing. Just don't do the first step. What he's talking about here in this verse is the very first step. Remember, that young man wandered down the path by the immoral woman's house late at night, and that's what started the whole problem. And this dad is just simply giving the most obvious advice. He says, if you don't want to allow your sexual sin to destroy you, he just simply says, don't take that first step. That is the simple wisdom of Proverbs chapter 7.